Hello, everyone. I'm Veronica Entwistle, and this is my good friend Lori, my assistant helper, all time bud. But anyway, what we're doing, I'm an intuitive and energy counselor. And what we want to do is explore using Miricris, which is my uh, I would call it a crowd of beings that take us to different dimensions. We want to explore what their perspectives are about politics, what's going on in the world these days, and what kind of advice can they give us about coping with it. So I want to take a minute and go into channeling. You ready, Lori?
Yeah. We have quite a slew of topics to cover. It's been strange, even though the news has been quite lean. All of a sudden, it got really full again, and yeah, we have some pretty interesting questions to ask, and we also have not just political, but we've also got some spiritual questions to ask, including channeling Jeanne d'Arc, Joan of Arc. I'm in France, by the way. Jeanne d'Arc and Dolores Cannon, for those who followed Dolores, incredible metaphysician, hypnotist with the ETs, UFOs. That was a big part of her work. So, anyways, please, after you, après vous.
So let's do a. I'm going to call in Miracris, who's my group of beings. I already mentioned it. They love us dearly. What it is on the other side, there are many, many beings or streams of intelligent energy that, are pretty conscious. And so I have this little group, and sometimes I think it's a big group. But anyway, that's not the point. But so we're going to find out what they have to say. So let's take a minute. We are here. We are here. You are informing yourselves in a way that is expanding your consciousness. We're very, very interested in the fact that humanity is pushing a kind of evolution. And I say kind of evolution because it is not fully 100% everyone's into evolution. As we have told this one over and over, probably it's about 30% of the population that really wants to evolve. And we say that the politics and the way the world is going is actually a ferment of many of those moves through human consciousness. Through human consciousness, when it comes to evolving, we want to say that your potential to reach for and hold greater understandings and to release a lot of the, you'll notice a lot of the wars are repeated. For example, this one is absolutely frustrated that, for example, Jewish people have been at war or been besieged for thousands of years. So the question is why? And also, we're explaining that the soul journey is what you're seeing in action. It's not today, it's not politics on that level, but it's not only the Jewish people, there are a number of populations around the world who are seeded by thousands of years of history. And a lot of the rancor and the problems that they have with one another come through their beingness. Now, how do we deal with it? And what we'll do is we'll use Lori's questions, but we'll break down that rapport when she's bringing up special questions about what's happening on the planet today. We would like to include a rapport with some of the historic memories, if that's the right term, the historic alignment of thoughts and feelings and styles of being that has come along and created all kinds of problems on today's world. So ask your questions, Lori.
Okay, so Miricris, since we're talking about evolution, before we dive deep into politics and history, um, uh, since we started talking about evolution, I'm sorry, and wanted to get an insight in how is disinformation changing in the world, or is it?
One of the things you have in this particular time is massive amounts of information. And as this one often chuckles and said, more information than ever before and less information than ever before. And the disinformation, as most of you know, is seeded by political groups, particularly Russian or the bigger powers, to break up what looked like America is very powerful, or was, and the seeding of information is specifically to break America apart and have it impossible for them to maintain power. And this has been a huge, huge setup for a long time. And what we're seeing here is that it's not only Russia, there are a number of different places. For example, you have TikTok going on, and that's just absolutely a direct seeding focus. They're using that as a huge popular media event in order to seed, to make money, of course, and to seed all throughout America, for example, the doubts and fears that can be intrinsic in Americans. I don't know if that answers that question, but please ask your specific questions.
Will we get on top of disinformation, misinformation, disinformation in our country?
You realize that it's going to take getting along, and there are. This one was watching something last night where there's a show where people are taking people from opposite sides, people who believe, for example, one was QAnon versus just a normal thinking person who wasn't particularly political, and how hard it is to get along and how hard it is from there to trust. And what we've got is raging trust problems all over the world. Nobody believes anyone anymore, and mostly because the disinformation has been sown by the need for political approval, political, you know this, they want your attention, so they say it in such a way as you'll give your attention. We see here that there is a rising tide. It's not huge enough to please us, but there's a rising tide of people who are asking to not to solve their political problems at this point, as much as asking who is influencing me right now, checking their references, finding out where these situations seed dissension in other countries. It's a huge, huge gift that you'll begin to see rising, where many will have these discussions of opposite sides of thinking and discover where the disinformation has been seeded. And this is not new. It happened 100 years ago. You understand that?
Yeah. In fact, this makes me want to ask the next question,
Please.
which is, Miricris, if you can bring in Joan of Arc. I think she's a great symbol for these times, and it's quite tragic. But I don't know if she's available or if she's transcended beyond.
She has transcended a great deal, but some information still remains. She is a one who, even at a young age, and you must admit that children, we all can admit this, children know it's wrong to kill each other for toys. You understand? And she came galloping in when she wasn't really allowed to be in the army. And you know this. And she, on her horse, and she came in to fight because her beliefs were so deeply spiritual, and so it was so wrong to be in these wars. And she wanted to come in and stop them. And when they call it a tragic life, it's very interesting because she didn't think it was so tragic, because dying for God was, in many ways, was a higher purpose. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm. I
We
would say
don't have
that's
that.
Yeah, I would say that's on par with the Catars as well, who were basically massacred down to the very last one in the early 1400s down here in the southwest of France. And yeah, they've dying for God, absolutely.
Yeah, and in at Masada, those places, if you've ever traveled through Israel as well, which is such an ancient, um, it's an ancient pot for civilizations, as you know. It's very old, and this is that's been one of the traditional ways of dying is for God.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Now, of course, we're speaking of God in a very religious sense. I think you and I feel God in a very spiritual sense, which is very different. Perhaps, you know,
well, we're
apples and
speaking it in
oranges.
general terms, which is a much higher purpose than just winning a war. That we
Right.
can agree that it means that actually.
Mm.
And people have starved themselves. People have, it's from our perspective, we say it's kind of crazy because learning consciousness and peace would probably help a whole lot more. Understand that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also, we're jumping here a little bit, but speaking of a
Just a
more,
moment to return to Joan of Arc.
yes,
We say
please.
one of the most wonderful things about her is that she has um, consistently sent her consciousness, if you will. We don't see her being available very much right now, but her consciousness, she has consciously tried to penetrate civilizations. Do you understand that? And her
Mm-hmm.
consciousness is love and um, helping each other and helping the planet and no war.
Mm-hmm.
She went to war to stop war. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what is your next question? She's a healer.
Yes, her spirit is very strong. I visited Orléans, south of Paris, about 4 months ago, to go visit and pay tribute to Joan, and this beautiful square in Orléans where she fought the battle and was actually captured by the English. It's very interesting, and they gave her back to the French, who the Roman Catholic Church, unfortunately, who then killed her. But her spirit is so powerful in that square in Orleans. Is a statue of her on a horse. Just incredible. And I visited her house as well. And really, really profound. She was quite angelic in a certain way.
And does it not remind you how um, individuals, whether you want to speak of religion and God and so on, individuals come in with some very, very powerful personal energies. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're one of those, and when we're speaking about evolution, I'll jump back into that. Speaking about evolution, that is a part of it, is to bring, to find a way to encourage. Not everyone can have that powerful inner light, but to encourage it in other people and know that it can actually solve the problems on the planet. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if she
Mm-hmm.
had listened to and not feared.
Mm. And just to jump to another more contemporary personality, that she was a metaphysician and she was known as a pretty adept hypnotist with her own style of getting involved in connecting with UFOs and aliens. And that's Dolores Cannon. I know that you've followed her and I follow her. Can you talk a little bit about her spirit? And
Yes, she is. It was, as you know, she was absolutely uh, um, groundbreaking in taking people in and actually working with past lives into their lives now. And not just simply, but she had a great deal of, she took notes and she had a lot of understanding about what we're talking about. For example, is the the Jewish history, which has got war in its history and abuse in its history. She was very amazing at finding the connections among people's past lives and the depth at which they have been following those intentions, those items, and so on. And she was very excited about ETs. We're not sure if that was after she found her way, bringing many people into connection with their past lives in order to empower people. You see, this is what people don't realize. It empowers people when you can drop in and find out much about your past lives and what it is that you're destined to create. You give yourself a great loftier approach to life. She was brilliant at that. Now, her work with ETs, we're not seeing a great deal about that at this point.
Mhm.
But we are saying that the grounding that she had in past life explorations was intense. And right now we're hearing that her explorations through ETs also is a part of her, the generation of the wisdom of the soul. What she was doing is freeing people so that they weren't necessarily this or that. You and I are not this or that. We are an accumulation and we're into just creating a product. And the product is of knowledge, of wisdom, and also being able to do things that we couldn't do before because we're now including a lot of wisdom, whether it came from the ETs or it came from our past lives. It didn't matter, but we're getting a greater and greater knowledge about, back to the thing about people who have been abused consistently, like going into their soul's journey and the compilation of their history and their personality in this life and how they can be moved out of war consciousness. You understand? That was kind of an interesting swirl around your question, but the art of being a conscious, multidimensional human being on the planet is one who has those abilities, which people like Joan of Arc, but also specifically and mechanically, Dolores Cannon, have increased our ability to work with so that we can become, or many can become, evolving human beings in a very conscious way. One other thing we want to say is that the planets, the universes, everything is speeding up. The frequencies are moving faster. And knowing that means that you can adapt to the moving frequencies and move through huge evolutionary changes deep within your own subconscious. So I drop back into the example of having the abuse of Jewish people, thousands of years old. It seems that they could also work in that milieu to move out of that. Just as Joan of Arc had the gold light, they can move out of this light that seems to want abuse. You see, our patterns, our subconscious patterns, attract to us the ways that we're going to get along. And we're saying the more you understand that about yourself, the more you're unhooked from these deep soul journey. And that to us is evolutionary.
Sure. And I would probably say it's not just, I mean, we can look at so many cultures where this is playing out. It's not just the Jewish culture, Palestinians, for instance. I mean, it's just, in fact, you have two imprints almost of similar imprints happening. And it doesn't matter who started it and blah, blah, blah. It's just.
But also, if you look into their soul's history, they've had a lot of interaction
Yes,
on those levels.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So you
And
see
then,
how weaving, it's very difficult to extricate oneself. But sometimes if you can get yourself aware of these things, it's easier.
Miricris, I have to ask, in the Middle East, is it Simply, we're talking about evolution and karmic healing, but is there something on, I just have to ask, geologically, on in the ground, in that part of the world that is is
Tremendous energy. There's tremendous energy. And also we spoke about the speeding up of your solar movement and all that. Well, the energy in the ground there was fecund. It was a starting. Well, when we say starting, that's not quite right, because nothing started right off there. It's been going on for centuries and centuries there, you see. But there was something about the energy in that part of the world that seeded populations. And it's about, we can see it. It's a mineral combination, a certain dampness and so on. And it was just, the seed sprouted, if you will.
Mm. And where would you say, because people have different ideas of where civilization first started, and that's a big question because it takes so long for organisms to become things. But where would you say, what part of the world where was that really vibrant? What are some of those parts of the world?
It's difficult because there's more than one. You understand
Yes.
that?
Yes.
But in the Middle East, it would be more at well, you know, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, but also farther into the desert. From that, there was a very deep, deep, deep beginning, and in that beginning, well, we have to remind everybody that there were places all over the world where civilizations began. You understand that? And
That's
some of them
right.
simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
But this one is particularly demanding of attention, mostly because it asks for that, but also because it was what they call it, the cradle of life. So we could call it the cradle of this particular civilization's life. You understand? Just humanity the way it is today. It took most of its roots from what happened there. But we see also many other places, including ones that were fueled by the ETs, you see.
Can you speak about, just quickly, can you tell us some of the places in the world? We know the continents, Africa, parts of probably Indonesia or Vietnam.
In Indonesia, indeed. There are several places over there, Tibet. There are several places that were initial beginning places of society. And just a moment here. Oh, the islands, Bimini, you know those ones? There was a great deal that's underground, powerful civilizations were centered there, but they've gone under the ocean, you see. And the energies around those islands are really terrifying for people because they seem to consume ships and so on. And you asked about energy earlier, and the energies over around the Middle East, so not around, but underneath the land there, are so energetic that they can create and stir life, maybe stirring a lot of anger because there's so much anger. But we suggest that a lot of the anger there, or in many of these places, is about who owns what, and who's royalty and who isn't, and so on. And that's something that comes when people have gold in their memories or gold in their hands, you know.
And speaking of beings of light, I just want to turn to Kamala Harris. I've always seen the light in her. I saw her light. And I think that was a huge attracting point. But can you speak a little bit about,
She's a little of your Joan of Arc,
yes, exactly. And can
and
you
she
speak,
has.
oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
No, you go
please.
ahead.
Um, Speak a little bit about how she's doing, what she's doing. She's been very, very quiet, and there's a lot of speculation about what she's doing. I know she was in Hawaii to take a much needed rest, but if there's anything else.
We see her rising up quite a bit of attention. But what she's done is she's smart, and she has stockpiled in herself strength and what is it? It's not resolve, but it's a resolve that has decision making in it. Do you understand that? Because she's having to go through herself. She's quite conscious about being sometimes egocentric. She's that kind of person who'll say, oh, that's just my ego. You see, she's got that kind of consciousness in her, which brings her to a new level of serving. She'll be out to serve people. And she may be. Now, this is a questionable thing because humanity thinks and humanity changes its mind, and consciousness thinks and consciousness changes its mind. We see there's still a chance that she will come into power.
Wow. Well, that leads right into my next question, which is many metaphysicians have been seeing Kamala actually taking office. That
Exactly.
and I have to ask this question because it has not been asked. The only way I can see her taking office is if Joe Biden, something happens to him and she takes that position, that office, before Trump comes in to be inaugurated, and something happens in there. I don't know. Can you speak to this?
Yes, Mr. Biden, he has a couple more. You realize he's done some amazing things with this waning section of his service. You know, he gets very little accolades, very few accolades for what he's doing, but who he will in history. However, he may. We have often seen after the first week in December, after that, there will be a huge shift coming up, you see, and it could be him. We pray that if it's him and he passes, he doesn't just collapse. You understand? That would be nicer for him because he does have great rapport with God, whoever you call that. And that possibility is very strong. But we're saying to you, there's a capriciousness in human consciousness. So sometimes the predictions don't work that well. And in the other side, if there is such a thing, 45's team and so on, there's a very belligerent kind of focus in the consciousness. You understand that? Which means it might be hard for her to triumph. But we feel that she will come into office. But that the caveat is, there's a battle going on. Even if you don't see which battle it is, there's a battle going on.
Wow, it's really hard to see how the logistics of this works exactly, with her possibly coming into office. That I understand if Joe passes on, yes, she would be the next in line.
But it has to happen swiftly, does it not?
Exactly, and it's kind of it's one way that I can see it happen, but then she would have to be vacating that office. Uh, um, I mean, I can't imagine what could happen that would allow her to stay in.
Well, we're suggesting something else, that
Okay.
there's a possibility of, is it Mr. Spoonamore?
Yes, Stephen
There's a
Spoonamore.
possibility of his work being like a huge bowling ball. Not just his, he has many others who are cohorts in this thinking now, and it's growing. And there is a possibility if, for example, Mr. Biden steps down or becomes ill or whatever, that the falling apart. And also something else is going to happen in 45's regime, that his picks for his government support are really disgusting people, and people know that. So we're saying the possibility of having a shakedown because of Mr. Biden's coming undone, or yes, we see Kamala Harris being stronger because of that, but we also see the danger in the shakedown on that side, bringing up some of the more cruel aspects of humanity. America's looking at having a very cruel administration, and you know that. And so we're saying this is the chrysalis, or this is the stew pot over the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We're not certain of time, and but we see it very catalytic, very boiling, very angry, and moving changes. And we're saying to everyone, say your prayers, pray and pray, because that conscious, whoever you pray to, doesn't matter. But when you lift your consciousness up and you send thoughts and intentions out there, and many people are doing that, you have terrific power. And we know you'll say, I've heard that already. We're saying this is really important right now. It's very important. And you could change it. One of the reasons we say that is not to be Miricris of America. It's because the whole world needs to understand that, for example, to conquer war, it needs to rise in a cohesive fashion and in believable discussions all over the world. But it can start right here, when people in opposition are discussing with each other because they want a higher consciousness in their country. And we're saying to you that this is a turning point, and if you can move through this time with that kind of consciousness, you're going to find the world follows. Not just follows, but it's also, how about penetrated? It's going to penetrate more and more beings around the world. People don't want war. Look at the leftovers in Ukraine and in Russia. Just look at the movies in Palestine. Oh my goodness, Lebanon. There's even some of the most brilliant ancient monuments to wisdom and God torn up, destroyed. We say that there is a possibility that waves of consciousness can pick up a number of people just by intuition, by just, it's not about selling a political setup. It's waves of intuition, waves of intention. And also one more thing, which you know, it's called love. And really inducing that possibility, because hatred is a very destructive element, is it not?
Right. Absolutely.
So we're not promising anything, but call in. One thing about Joan of Arc is she has the ability, where she is, although we say she's not fully available, you understand that, but she has the ability to send her kind of we're calling it rollicking. She had a very fierce rollicking nature when it came to getting things done the way she wanted, and she wanted to serve and to save a number of people and so on. Her kind of energy is also has, the interesting thing is, a great deal of love in it, meaning love doesn't mean you don't bop somebody over the head. Love meaning that you go right in there and you just believe in your heart that you're going to help, and that's the way it's going. And you can call on her to lend her or to infuse. Let's call it an infusion.
That's beautiful. I mean, she's a saint.
She is a saint.
And
what does a saint mean, Lori? Doesn't it mean
exactly.
you radiate, you
Mhm.
radiate, right? You've achieved that and you radiate from a position of wisdom and that golden light within.
Mhm.
That
Absolutely. And speaking of saints, I'm just going to go to who is somebody who maybe I'm jumping the gun, but back to Stephen Spoonamore. I think he's a bit of a saint. He calls
is
himself a hammer. That's the name
good.
he's now taken in his Substack postings. And
Yay.
I've been a big devotee of following his work because it's so intricate, and he has spent hundreds of thousands of hours investigating. This wasn't just a simple letter. This has now grown. He's done 6 or 7 letters. He's got a consortium of people now working
This
with
is
him.
one of the best things is that he has a group of people, a very a network of people that are committed, and that helps him a lot, or helps all of us.
Yeah, and in one of his more recent letters, he brought up the fact that Elon Musk was paying $47 per person for people to go door to door and register people. And that then in Pennsylvania jumped to
To
100. And this is part of what he's asking the question: where are these lists of these registered voters? Where are the lists that Elon Musk
You
captured
know that
through his
he did not put
$1 million
the list.
lottery and his door-to-door activity? Where are these lists? So that's one thing that Stephen is really asking those questions.
We don't see that he put the lists in,
Say that again, please.
We don't see that he put the lists in, meaning he paid people off and then he didn't have to submit their names, you see.
Right.
He's not a very honest man. Forgive me for saying that, Elon, but
No, I'm calling him Klingon now. We have 45 in Klingon. So, no, seriously, it's Klingon.
JD Vance is coming apart. Are you there?
Yes, I want to hear more.
JD Vance is inside of the work he's been doing. There's some kind of corruption, but it's also that he isn't very good at keeping all the pieces together, which we could say 45 is like that too. But in any case, he looks like he's been hiding some nefarious activity, and it's going to start showing up. So he's coming undone, we would say. He's coming undone.
Wow.
But
As
also, almost everyone that 45 is put in is subject to a very similar thing.
Well, and on the top of the news this afternoon, every one of his cabinet picks has received bomb threats.
Whoa.
Yes, that has now just come out through the FBI. I saw it on the news.
And what do you think about that? Bomb threats?
I think you mean whether they happen or not. I mean, it's an expression, right? It's a reaction to a pressure buildup, to who knows, at the same time, who knows who's running the bomb threats? They don't have anybody. We had these bomb threats during the election at the polling places. I forget how many there were, but it was incredible. And so anyways, it's hard
But
to
you
know.
understand how humanity is. As soon as they don't like what somebody's success brings forward, they start with threats. And it's a very, very immature and very primitive approach. This is not democracy. America is not a democracy at this time. You understand that?
Yes. Yes. I wanted to go back to this voting thing just a little bit because Stephen Spoonamore brought up in his last letter about ESS. ESS is the electronic voting company, machine company.
Mhm.
And lo and behold, they're based in Nebraska, Omaha. And all of a sudden, I remembered hearing Sterling talking about a company in the Midwest, data processing company. Something has gone on there. And we know Dominion was the other company that the Republicans went after in 2020. And there was improprieties inside these voting machines that was discovered, and but there was some nefarious activity with all that as well.
Did that change the voting that came out of that area?
Yes, there was some aspects to it that weren't authentic. And so now Stephen is now questioning ESS, which is now the major voting machine company in the United States. They have the most percentage of machines in the United States in all the states. But and they're very shady. They're very shady, very secretive.
Mm-hmm.
And
And you understand that these places are clever in that parts of it is very good and well intentioned, and part of it is very nefarious, dark. You see, so that's part of the problem. There's this fraudulent do good part.
Do you think ESS had something to do with the suppression?
Yes.
Or, yeah, because one of the things that they're seeing in the votes, and they've done massive, I mean, these scientists, you should see these and statisticians are doing these amazing tables and calculations of all these precincts, trying to look for a mathematical equation. And one thing that's been sticking is this 3% difference that seems to be a pattern. And so anyways, so ESS had something to do with this?
Yes. When you speak of the 3% difference, it's 3% of the population, are you saying?
There was consistently a 3%, the number 3 consistently appears through the voting rolls of how many. Now, again, I'm not a statistician or a computer scientist, or you have to follow this stuff, but it's really 3% seems to be a major thing that's been coming out, that if you were to look at what a machine is doing, the number 3 seems to be in the tabulation.
So what we're learning is that the tabulation machines have been carefully doctored to sort to sort votes.
Yeah, and it's so I'm curious about ESS and what they've been up to, and if they're going to get investigated.
There's one moment. One of the frustrating situations is that if there's enough movement from 45's team or camp, they will quell that. There needs to be an investigation. They will stop it. We want Mr. Biden to please help before he gets much more frail.
Right. But again, I think the major question everybody's having, are they doing anything?
Mr. Biden, you mean?
Harris, Biden, the Democrats?
Yes, they are. They're seeding. He is trying to understand what's been going on, and he has connections that are working with him. And she is also preparing. They have all kinds of personal connections with people who are in the know. So we give you our vote to say they are working behind the scenes and as stealthily as they can. They want no one to know what's going on with them.
You
And
mean
they're,
with this voting
yes,
situation? Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And the reality is Biden himself is heartbroken because it's the tearing up of America, giving away to 45. Biden cares a lot. He's trying to be an undercurrent, underground kind of person. And that's what he's working on. And we're not privy to what it is he's doing, but I assure you that he's as strong as he is, he's penetrating undercurrents and so on and so forth.
Okay. Excellent.
He's but also Lori, he's heartbroken
Yeah.
that it's such a mess.
Yep. Well, they need to rise. I think this is how most people feel right now. We're in a tenuous situation because everyone's sitting on pins and needles who feel that this election was stolen. And there seems to be more and more data coming out through various, like I've said, not Stephen, but a whole group of computer scientists and data analysts, cybersecurity people being
But I
able.
have talked to several people who have said, oh, they're just imitating Trump.
That's the problem.
Yes.
This whole movement of right-wing conspiracy has now leached into the left.
Yes.
And you even have Chuck Schumer damping down on this and right on the edge of, we're not going to buy into that because we're not conspiracists.
But
And
we tell you that there is some major, it's hard to explain. It's like there's a nugget coming up. And in that nugget, it's irrefutable.
wow.
And it's coming through Spoonamore, not through him, but someone who's associated with what he's doing. And then there's a big, almost frightened excitement because people know that this is worth their life. This is war. Right?
It's war in a very smart, intellectual way.
Yes,
not
but it
an
is
insurrection. War. That's the difference. The left isn't going to go out and do an insurrection. But what's so beautiful right now is this grassroots movement, because the politicians, like, they can't come aboard and talk about this right now. That would be stupid.
Right.
They'd be playing their hand. I get it. But what's so beautiful behind the scenes is this huge democratic, I want to call it, movement of people trying to get to the truth through their smarts, through their intellectualism, and trying to uncover the truth.
But in the middle of it all, you must understand there's a lot of mistrust in one another as well. However, we cannot say enough, bless them, send them light. Yes. These are working in a kind of a shady underbelly of something. And we see that it's very, very possible for them to come up with what's right. But the milieu of being in an untrusting soup, that's it's very wearing. Even if you trust everything around you and you're in that soup, you'll feel nervous or less trusting, you see?
Right. Okay.
And we only say that not to make you sad, but to say, be strong, be bold. Don't believe in all that, don't believe it doesn't work. We know there's something, it'll go down in history.
Oh, I'm sure this will.
But I'm not sure that's what you really are aiming for.
Just aiming for the truth, right?
Yes.
Uncovering the truth behind the veil.
Popular in this society.
Well, the truth is, yes. And yeah. And, it's very funny about that, because I think this tariff issue, you have to ask, who is more stupid, Trump or the public?
Both. It's a hoodwink.
Yes. And now conservatives are looking at the tariff and going, are you kidding me? Is that what he's proposing? A tariff to stop illegals and fentanyl? Like, How does that work? Fentanyl, 90% of it is made in the United States or comes from Asia.
There have
So,
been some wonderful articles about how America has the most guns and the most drugs and
well,
sells the most drugs.
and that brings me to this lovely, I think she's going
Almost
to,
funny,
I
Lori.
know, I know. This brings me to the new Mexican president, Claudia Scheinbaum,
Hmm.
who's standing up to Trump. I just read a letter that she wrote to him, and she's calling it as it is, basically. She goes, by the way, the criminals that we capture in Mexico who've committed crimes, 70% of the guns are from the US. So, but she's not taking it. She's standing up to him.
You know what she is? We'll say this in honor of the feminine psyche. She's a woman who has cleared her being mistreated and being deceived by the powers that be. The woman's power is going to be very strong in a while. It's just moving through changes now. But women have an innate sense of life and death and war. It comes with the hormones. You understand that? But most women are still engaged in, I have to get somebody to look after me, or all these other things, you know that. But she's one of the ones that's just shining.
Yeah, I think she's got the light. And I
Mm-hmm.
think she's going to become a formidable world leader. I really
And
do.
you'll notice by her name that she is an assortment of other historical societies. So it's not just a Mexican. You see what I mean? And
Right.
and the fact that many people have intermarried with different nationalities and so on can
Absolutely.
make the people much stronger.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so like that. Yes, you have to
Yeah.
say.
I'm very excited about her rising. And I think Mexico's going to find themselves on the world stage in a different kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
Their is it their gross national product? Just it's 22% up.
Wow!
Yeah, they're really starting to turn a corner.
Yay!
So anyways,
Well,
anything
we're
else?
we want very much to wish you all the greatest. It's love. We want the power of love, but we also want you to have the courage to kick your feet and rise to the top in the layers of consciousness that are available to you. Move your consciousness up, and you can actually change this country in a way that you want to. I don't mean just change it and dominate it. I mean, it can become a wonderful foundation for evolution of the species. And there's many, many associations with ETs coming up through it as well. But we need to release ourselves right now. And don't underestimate the value of love and good wishes for the people you can't stand. It'll push away a certain kind of might that is squashing a lot of truth in this country.
Okay. Thank you, Miricris.
Thank you, Lori.
Really, really beautiful. Always, always lovely to chat.
Much love.